Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the weekly news show where we keep you up to date as to everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. I'm your host, Nick Serpa, and today we are joined by Luiz Estrella.
Hello everyone, glad to be back here once again.
Yes, we are glad to have you, Luiz. And over in the other corner, we've got Nicolas Shade.
Hello, hello.
I'm making it sound like a boxing match, but like we're not gonna, no fighting on this episode.
Not yet.
Everyone needs to behave.
Not yet.
No, not yet. We're all friends here. All right, this is episode 30, by the way. We hit another number ending in 0, so that's exciting. So congrats, everyone, episode 30. Thanks to all of our listeners who have been sticking with us. Like I always say, you know, we want to get more and more people listening to the show. You know, we're a free show. We're not asking for anyone's money. All we want is to entertain you and keep you all informed. So please spread the word about this podcast. We would appreciate it. All right, we've got some pretty big news this week. Nothing super big from the big Nintendo, the big N themselves, but some interesting games were shown off. We got some interesting third-party news. And I just want to start just kind of out of the gate with just this pretty big topic that I didn't expect to see this week. So Microsoft, they have been pretty public lately, kind of in the public eye, because they are currently attempting to buy Activision Blizzard, something that has been contested by Sony, and so Microsoft has had to make all these public statements and release all this information, and Phil Spencer has had a lot to say lately, and one of the things he said this past week was that he would love to see Call of Duty make a return to the Switch. Which is pretty notable. We have not had a Call of Duty game on a Nintendo platform since the Wii U, which I think the last game we got on there was, gosh, like Black Ops 2 or maybe like a Modern Warfare game.
I think it was Call of Duty Ghosts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you might be right. But yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, that was probably about a decade ago at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, on one hand, I feel like it would be a no-brainer, right? I mean, this is a huge franchise, and I could see them putting something on the Switch, but at the same time, you know, the games they're putting out now are just such, you know, technical powerhouses and really demanding, and I can't even see a world where even if we got some of the best porting companies on the Switch to port some of these games down, I don't know how they would run, but yeah, what's your take on this, Luiz? Is this something you'd like to see? Do you think it's actually going to happen?
I'm not a huge fan of FPS in general, and Call of Duty in particular, I've never been a huge fan. But as you said, I always found it to be a little strange how the series never came to the Switch, because Call of Duty is one of those huge series that sells a lot of money and companies just want to put in every single console. Like, for example, FIFA is on Switch, even though it's not the same version. I think right now, the only way that I can see this is working is something similar to how it happened on the Wii era. The Wii received a lot of the Call of Duty games at the time, and I think it was a different company who develops like a totally different game that worked specifically for the Wii. It was a different case compared to the Wii U, because on the Wii U we actually received like a similar version to the other consoles, because the Wii U wasn't more powerful. So I think on the Switch, because I think all the fans of FPS in general, usually they want to see their games in 60 FPS. So if they made a port that would not run as good as it runs on the other consoles, I don't see all the major Call of Duty fans actually playing the game on Switch. And also, the game is like, I think nowadays is like the game that Activision pushes the graphics to the limits. It's always like a powerhouse to showcase the capability of the console. So yeah, it's a complicated situation, but I would love to see the series on Switch. Any game that has the possibility to come to the Switch, I think it's good news.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up those weird Wii versions. There were also DS versions of some of the Call of Duty games that were like, they called them the Reflex editions, and they were like really scaled down. I mean, they were fundamentally like the same game. They had similar levels, you know, but just very simplified takes. And I don't know how well they sold, but they must have sold well enough because, you know, they made enough versions of it. I mean, the Call of Duty name, I feel like no matter what format it's in, it's gonna sell.
Yeah,
even
agree.
if the Switch version can't keep up with the other consoles, or they have to do, I don't know, maybe even a cloud version would do well. It's not what I want to see, but I mean, that Call of Duty name has power out there. One thing I could see happening is, so way back, I don't know if you guys remember, there was this little console called the PlayStation Vita. Not a lot of not a lot of people
Sorry,
pick
what?
one up.
Kind of forgotten.
Right? Yeah. Even Sony forgot about that console.
Yeah.
But the Vita did get actually an exclusive Call of Duty game that was developed for that system. Now, granted, it was not a very good game. It didn't, win any awards for its story, and but the multiplayer is still active. There are still people playing it. So I could see some interest, if Microsoft really did buy Activision Blizzard and all that goes through, and they really want to get something on the Switch that's going to make some money. I could see them investing in maybe making, I don't know, like a multiplayer only Call of Duty game that features like some classic maps or something tailored for the hardware. I feel like would make the most sense. I don't know. What do you think, Nicholas?
I have a hard time seeing that happen. I think, like we've said, the only way this would work is, or the most likely way this would work is if they made a Call of Duty game specifically for the Switch, and I just have a hard time seeing that happen because they haven't done that for quite a few years at this point, making one specifically for a Nintendo console.
Right.
And
Which makes me sad.
Even with all of the support that Microsoft has provided for Nintendo, like all the stuff like GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie being on N64, Cuphead, Ori, all the stuff from Microsoft that has made its way to the Switch, it's never been like a huge porting deal, right? It hasn't been something where the games have been so insanely technically advanced that a porting job would be astronomically difficult, at least as far as I can tell. But something like Call of Duty, either they make a brand new game for the platform, which is a lot of work, or they have to find a way to kind of downport the current gen versions, which again would be a lot of work compared to what they've already done for the system. Unless they really change how they're treating Call of Duty, and I guess how they're treating the Switch in general, if they do acquire Activision Blizzard, it just kind of seems like lip service to me.
Yeah, I think...
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Luis.
No, I was just going to say that both Activision and Microsoft, the strategy that those two companies had with the Switch was basically to port the games that made a lot of sense on the Switch, like cartoonish experiences. For example, Activision, we had Spyro, Crash, even Tony Hawk, which is a more realistic, but it's still a very arcade experience. And the same goes to Microsoft. Cuphead, Lucky Tales. So I think it's those games that they are kind of more to the Nintendo audience, more similar to what Nintendo fans usually consume. And I see that, I think they see Call of Duty out of that spectrum.
Yeah, there's still kind of that perspective of this game is mature, dark shooter, it's not for the kids platform, which is definitely an outdated perspective, but it's also kind of, it's understandable where they would get that impression concerning their legacy, even if it is something that doesn't really apply anymore.
Well, you say that, Nicholas, but like Phil Spencer, this is his quote. He said, "Our intent is to treat Call of Duty like Minecraft." So actually, like directly comparing it to a kids game. He says, he says, "I'd love to see the game playable on many different screens. I'd love to see it on Switch." I mean, I know that's just aspirational talk. It could just be something that he's saying, given the whole legal situation, saying, we're not trying to be anti-competitive. We want to, because that's one of the big, challenges that they're facing right now with this whole transaction. They want to buy Activision Blizzard. PlayStation does not want them to do this because they're worried they're going to lose a huge chunk of their players over to Microsoft, which I think is an understandable concern. But they're trying to make it sound like, this is going to cripple us or whatever. And I'm not an expert on all that, but
Monopoly
but
and all that.
I feel like, yeah. But that could be part of the reason why he's coming out and saying things like this, and maybe they don't intend to do it. I don't know. If it does ever happen, I think, it would be a couple years away, and we'd probably be into a more powerful Switch hardware cycle at that point, I would hope.
Maybe.
So that
That's a
change
possibility,
things,
yeah.
I mean, the other thing is they would have to kind of lower the file sizes a bit, because I'm not sure the current modern Call of Duty game would even fit on a Switch cartridge.
On a cartridge.
That is a great point.
You would need like what, a 256, 512 gigabyte cartridge, which I don't think any game currently on Switch has that.
And
or even close to that.
Gigantic downloads to play the game. Which would be.
They
would
just
be
ship it with
bit-
They just ship it with like a 500 gigabyte micro SD card and be like, here's your cartridge.
But here's a question for Nick. Do you think that the Call of Duty series is like this super popular series in the US? Because I think in the PS2, PS3 era, Call of Duty was basically the most popular franchise in the gaming world. I think like everyone was playing that game on the online, on the single player and things like that. Do you still think that the series has this strong presence that everyone knows what Call of Duty is, even the people who are not super gamers?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a hard question to answer. I feel like when I was a kid, Call of Duty was everywhere. And it was the main game people were talking about at high school. People were always wearing shirts, People would always say, oh, come over, this is what we're playing tonight. Not to me, I didn't get invited to Call of Duty sessions. No, I'm kidding. I was more of a Super Mario Galaxy kind of guy anyway. But yeah, I don't feel like the brand has quite the impact nowadays. Now that there's so many more games, people have really shifted. I think the free-to-play model has kind of taken over, and I think there are a lot more casual gamers out there who are like, oh, I could play this great first-person shooter for free. Why would I go pay $70 for the new Call of Duty game? But that being said, I do think the franchise still carries a lot of weight, mostly in terms of it really has kind of positioned itself as we are highlighting like the state of the art right now. Like we are showing what technology is capable of. There really are very few games, I think, in my opinion, that look as good as a brand new Call of Duty release in any given year. Right. So I think for that reason, it will always be relevant. Whether or not that transfers over to Nintendo hardware, I don't know. But I'd love to see them try.
Yeah. It's also one of the only games out there right now that kind of fills the niche of like the realistic shooter. Because all of the big free-to-play games, Fortnite, Apex, Valorant, whatnot, are all very much hero-based, or they're a little bit more cartoony. They have, like, Batman fighting Rick from Rick and Morty. Although, technically, Call of Duty has had some weird crossovers as of late, so they could be going that direction, too.
I think it's Call of Duty and Battlefield, right?
Yes, basically. And Battlefield had an interesting launch. So Call of Duty sort of has the monopoly in that market.
True.
Yeah, I'd love to see a new Medal of Honor game. I feel like that franchise is kind of forgotten about, and those were some great historical first-person shooters, and maybe not the modern day. They tried the modern day thing that didn't really work out very well for them, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, time will tell. But I personally would love to see what Call of Duty on the Switch would look like. All right. So I hate to bring down the mood a little bit, but one of the things we like to do on the show is we like to recognize some of the people involved in game development and talk about the people behind the games. And we wanted to recognize someone who has passed away recently. Her name is Rieko Kodama. And she worked for Sega for a very long time. She passed away earlier this year in May, but it was just kind of made public this past week. And I don't want to make this too sad. I really what I want to do here is I just want to highlight some of the work she did. She was really notable in the games industry at the time because, especially back in the 80s, when she started her career, there were not a lot of women in game development. That's changed to some extent today. But, she has kind of made a point in her career to encourage women to get into game development. She has been recognized as one of the first female video game artists. Nintendo Power once called her the first lady of RPGs. So she's kind of been the face of representing women getting work in the game industry for a long time, which is really important. But the games she worked on also, I mean, she had a huge impact on a really wide range of Sega franchises. She started off working on some smaller Sega projects, but the first game she was really known for was Phantasy Star. She worked on the original Phantasy Star, and she was the lead artist on that game. She designed all the characters, the environments, and from there, she worked on all kinds of stuff, some real classics, including some Sonic the Hedgehog games. I think most recently, she worked on in terms of like big RPGs, she worked on the Seventh Dragon game that came to the 3DS. So she's been a huge part of the games industry. She's been a huge part of Sega, and just wanted to take a moment to recognize her and her accomplishments.
The description that you made about her career is perfect. Like, she has so many games with her name attached, and those are really like historically important games. And I never heard about her before, and now that I'm seeing all the games that she worked on, I'm looking. A lot of them are like RPGs that I always wanted to play, but I never actually played. And one of them is, of course, the Phantasy Star series that I heard a lot of nice things about it. But I know that she also worked on Skies of Arcadia, which it's a game that has a fantastic look. I always looked at this game and said, I want to play this someday. It was a Dreamcast game, but I think later it was ported to the GameCube and other consoles. And it's a game that I think Sega should really bring back to the Switch or the actual console, so people can have the experience to play these games. It's fascinating to see a woman so important to the JRPG industry, to so many of those games that define the genre at the beginning. So yeah, I think it's her work is just amazing, and she'll be really missed in the industry.
Yeah, it helps bring to light like these people working on games that obviously she has a following. She was known, I think, probably more so in the 90s than nowadays, but still it's people that you don't really hear of much that put in so much work into making the games that we have nowadays what they are, into just kind of defining the industry as a whole in a way through their work on like huge landmark titles like the RPGs that we mentioned. It's funny to think about all these people that put so much effort that sadly aren't recognized until later on, but
right, especially considering how big some of these games were at the time. I mean, Phantasy Star was never like on the level of like a Final Fantasy franchise, but it really was a big RPG franchise for Sega, and I think was one of the franchises that really, especially when you look at like action RPGs, really kind of laid a lot of groundwork for things coming later. And yeah, to your point, Luiz, about Skies of Arcadia, I mean, she was instrumental in that game, and so that game has brought so much, so many memories and holds a really strong place in a lot of people's heart. I think it's really important to recognize these people, and it's sad that sometimes we don't always talk about these people until they've passed away, and I hope that changes. But regardless, I just I want to say to the family, I doubt they're listening, but we give our condolences, and I hope everyone is able to go back and maybe revisit some of these games that she worked on, and take a look back at the history of game development and recognizing what she brought to the industry.
Yeah.
All right, sure. Let's transition back into some games. We've got quite a few games to talk about this week. We did get some new announcements, some updates on a few things. Quite a bit to talk about. We're not going to get to everything. But before we get to the games, this is kind of a weird thing I wanted to shout out. So we all are familiar with, the modern literary classics. When you think of the literary classics, Nicholas, would you think of Kirby kind of being up there with the rest of them? Shakespeare and that.
I don't know why you wouldn't, honestly. I mean, he's pink.
Yeah, that's true.
Come on,
that's
he
really
eats
all you
a
need.
lot. Yeah.
So I did not know this, but apparently in Japan, well, we all know Kirby's very big in Japan. Apparently there's a whole series of Kirby light novels in Japan. I guess he got one for Kirby and the Forgotten Land and some other stuff, but now they're making a whole book based on Kirby's Dream Buffet, which how would that work? I don't understand.
You don't understand the deep overarching plot of Kirby grabbed a magic fork that shrunk him down so he can eat even more cake?
I mean, the lore is there.
Yeah.
The lore is there. So here's a rough synopsis based on a translation, courtesy of our friends over at Nintendo Life. So apparently there's a galactic witch who's created a mountain of snacks using a magical fork, and the fork can grant wishes. So Kirby is trying to go get the food in the fork, I suppose. And apparently Meta Knight and King DDD are involved. So I don't know what to make of all that. And if I could read Japanese, I'm sure I would pick it up, but I can't read Japanese, unfortunately.
It looks fun. I don't know. I know that Kirby is very famous in Japan. It's very popular, but I wonder if those media related to Kirby is more directed to a young audience, like it's something more for kids and stuff like that. Because it looks a little like it, right? It's a story it's like a classic story for kids to read before sleep or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a light novel, so I imagine it could just be kind of very early teens or a little bit older kids. Because it's not completely, all pictures, but it still has quite a few illustrations. And
right.
I think it's a little bit lighter on content.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting just regional differences where over in Japan, Kirby is really like a multimedia superstar. He's not just games, but books and restaurants. And
all the
there's
Kirby
the Kirby Cafe.
All the Kirby.
Oh.
Yes. Whereas over here, he's just known for his games. But yeah, I can't really imagine like buying a Kirby book. Maybe if it was in English, I'd consider it. It could be a cool collector's item at the very least. But yeah, I saw some people saying like, "Oh, this would be a cool thing to have on my shelf," even if I have no idea what it's saying. But yeah.
Really, the takeaway from this is that Kirby needs to expand his multimedia empire across the entire world.
I agree.
I need Kirby vacuum cleaners, Kirby pillows.
Kirby pillows you could probably get. I don't know.
I think they are in Japan.
But that would be hilarious.
They have like these funny like sort of dome shaped things where you stick your head in them and you're like kind of covered by the dome so you don't see anything. And I'm pretty sure I've seen one that's just like Kirby's open mouth that you stick your head into.
Oh my god, I thought you were kidding about... oh no, wait. Okay, I googled Kirby vacuum cleaner and a lot of results came up, but apparently there's actually like a brand called Kirby. Like, not like the thing Kirby, like an actual vacuum.
I mean, honestly, that's easy collaboration.
Yeah. I got very excited when I saw Kirby.com and it said Kirby's best vacuum cleaner, but it's not the Kirby that we all know and love, unfortunately. Yeah.
Do we know?
Nintendo,
do we know?
Get on that.
Do you know how much of Kirby is Nintendo and how much is HAL Laboratory? Like, does HAL Laboratory has any... It's similar to Game Freak with Pokemon that they can create all of that stuff without Nintendo saying anything.
I would assume Nintendo probably has more of a stake in Kirby just because we've never seen a Kirby mobile game.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
But I don't know how much freedom HAL has over the character. Because we have seen some more unique things in terms of having like Kirby free-to-play titles on Switch and 3DS and just having a lot of like smaller experimental things. So I imagine they probably still have like a decent amount of independence as long as they stick to Nintendo properties.
Because
but then again, you also have all the multimedia stuff.
Yeah, it feels like they treat it a little bit different than how Nintendo treats their own IPs. We see more stuff from Kirby, yeah.
Yeah, my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that I think HAL Laboratories, I think they have the most control over the character, because I remember I saw a story last year where they were trying to, like, HAL Laboratory was trying to shut down this, like, very I don't know how to say it. Very interesting card game that featured let's just say lewd imagery of Kirby characters.
Okay.
On it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, it was like on the internet and people could go and buy it, and HAL Laboratory shut it down. So that leads
Understandably.
me to believe. Yeah, I don't think they would want that out there.
Kirby is a child.
That
He
was
does not
Yeah,
deserve this.
exactly.
That was a weird time. Yeah, this is a moment I think we would all like to erase from our collective memory. But yeah, anyways, on that note, let's talk about some games. So this is just kind of a weird bit of history that is coming over to Switch. So those of you who were around in the N64 game might remember a 3D platformer called Glover, where you literally control a walking glove and you can like grab things and I mean, you're a glove. You look like the Master Hand from Super Smash Brothers. Like, imagine if that was the protagonist of a video game. And it got a re-release on Steam randomly like a year or two ago. And now it is coming to Switch and other consoles, and it looks like it is in all of its chunky N64 glory. Oh man, I love seeing these weird kind of off-the-wall classics come to the Switch, because a lot of times they're things that are just not like on my radar at all, and I'm like, oh, here's a weird piece of history that I can now go check out, you know?
Yeah.
This kind of begs the question of why this is even a thing, though. Glover is neat. But it's still sort of a niche N64 platformer. It's one you hear of maybe in like the same kind of tone as like Gex, I guess, or those other like sort of older, those kinds of era of platformers. But it's not like a huge re-release.
So you're saying calling it a classic might be an overstatement? Maybe a cult classic?
No.
Would that be better?
A classic to some, I'm sure.
The company that is publishing the game is Killbytes, which is a Brazilian publisher, and from time to time they try to. It's not the only classic game that they publish, but I think they try to find these games that people don't remember that well, but there's a specific niche that really remembers that game, and it's like, oh, I completely forgot that this thing existed, but I played when I was a kid or something like that. But to be honest, looking at the trailer, it doesn't look that bad to me. It is at the level of Gex, of being a bad early 3D platformer.
I never said it was bad,
good.
to be fair.
So bad it's good, right?
Oh, I see. It looks neat. It looks neat. Like you have this Glover
I
and
would
you're
try
like
it.
controlling the ball. It's a nice idea, but I don't know how it actually works.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that though about bringing older games back, it does bring to mind like, was it the Tasmanian Tiger? I think, kind of also like an older, I guess it was PS1 era platformer that made it over recently.
Yeah.
Cal the Kangaroo, I don't know if it's as old, but I know that recently.
I remember that
like a while ago.
It was
Oh
recently.
yeah, that one got like a big. I think was it a brand new game or was it like a remake? I'm not sure. It looked like a brand
It got
new
new
game.
content. I know that much. It also got like a ukulele costume DLC.
I think it was a little bit of
last
both.
week.
Yeah, it was like a
Gotcha,
remake, but also
gotcha.
with new content. I think in this generation, a lot of 3D platformers are returning because they. Like another example I was thinking of was the SpongeBob 3D platformer, which was not so. It was on the PS2 and GameCube era, so it was a little more modern. But I still think that nowadays a lot of people miss those kind of games, those 3D platforms. Nowadays we basically have Mario, right? So I think it's always fun to see those games coming back in some way or another.
I mean, yeah, it does make sense when you consider that the people that were nostalgic for these old games are getting to be adults at this point. So it's you know, it's part of the market that you can kind of lean into.
There's a niche, yeah.
Yeah. I never owned an N64 myself, but I do have a lot of memories of going over to my neighbor's house and playing some of the classics over there. And playing some at like I went to like a kids club and played some games there. So I do have some nostalgia for that like era, but yeah, there's a lot of like these weird. I guess you could call them hidden gems that just totally passed me by. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out at some point. No release window on this one. Like I said, it is available now on Steam, but I assume probably in the next year or so we'll probably see the Switch
Yeah,
version.
just to throw a small shade at Nintendo, but to me it doesn't make any sense that Glover will be released right now and it will be full screen, but Mario 64 wasn't full screen at the Super Mario 3D All Stars. Completely unrelated, but I just wanted to point that.
Yeah, 3D All Stars had
Yeah.
a few problems.
They did do quite a bit of work on this re-release. That was one of the things they were advertising with the Steam release of this game. So,
Yeah.
it does seem like, I do always like wonder like when we get these random standalone re-releases, I'm like, this would have been a good fit for the Switch Online expansion pack. You know, I'm sure like any extra content in there would have the subscribers happy. But it seems like they
Nintendo
might be more
Online cannot
advanced than this.
contain. Nintendo Online cannot contain the magnificence of widescreen Glover.
Well said, Nicholas. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, a couple other games I want to highlight this week. Thunderful Games. They are a smaller indie publisher, and they've been on a roll lately. They announced a couple games coming to Switch just in the next month or so. One of them was on my radar, but two of them were not. And so I wanted to just highlight some of these because they all look really interesting in their own way. So we got three games here. The first one I want to highlight, I don't know how you say it. It looks like it's like Togges, or it's spelled Togges. And it is a 3D puzzle platformer. And the only way I really know how to describe it, looking at this trailer, is it looks like a 3D take on Box Boy. Like you are controlling this protagonist, right? And you leave like a trail of cubes behind you that you can like stack up on top of each other and use to like navigate on top of things, create paths and things like that. But it looks like you have like just like an unlimited amount of like cubes, so it's kind of different in that way. It looks cool. It looks really unique. We see a lot of 3D platformers, but I haven't seen one that takes this kind of approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks super interesting, super colorful and all. The only thing is I'm not entirely sure what's going on, because there is so much going on with the way that they're manipulating boxes and moving around. It seems super... like there's a lot of mechanics tied to this, even to the color of the boxes themselves as you're placing them. And I am not entirely sure what you do in this game, because everything, it just looks like there's so much to it.
I think it's a little like Nick compared with Box Boy. I think he has a little bit of focus on puzzles, maybe. For those who are not seeing it, the main character is basically like one of those automatic vacuums that go.
He looks like Beepo. He looks like Beepo from Mario Plus Rabbids.
Like a small robot. So it's really unorthodox. It's really different from your usual platformer. I don't quite get how it works, but it looks the visual is really nice. It looks really fun.
It's charming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a really unique art style. They call it a stack forming adventure, which I know that's just PR speak, but it looks unique. It doesn't look like you can jump, so it looks like laying the boxes is your main form of traversal. But yeah, I think that looks cool. I love the art style. I love the gameplay concept. I don't know if we're gonna get our hands on a review code for this one or anything, but it comes out December 7th, so not too long to wait for that one. One other game, one of the other games that Thunderful announced this week. So this one, I thought was cool. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with the Zoink games? They're a smaller indie developer. Some of their games that come to mind, they did like Stick It to the Man. I don't know if you guys ever played that one. I think they were involved in one of those EA like originals game. I think they worked on like Faye. Was what it was called? You guys remember that?
Yeah, vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not like a household name by any means, but they work on some interesting experimental games here and there. And this one seemed cool to me. This one is called Wavetale, and they're calling it a story-driven action-adventure game, which I know we have a lot of those. I think like at first glance, people might compare it, oh, it looks like a, just like Zelda-like or something like that, action-adventure stuff. But what's cool about this one, if you watch the trailer for it, you you're like skidding along like the surface of the water is like your main method of getting around. So there's a big emphasis on like sailing over waves like with your feet, and you can like launch yourself into the air, it looks like, and you're performing like this aerial parkour as you're like launching yourself around the map. The traversal is what stands out to me in this game. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
I haven't quite seen anything like this for a third-person game like this.
Yeah, it gives huge Pathless vibes to me.
True.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's a good comparison.
But,
yeah, well, at least for the movement. It does look like there's a bit more of an emphasis on combat and just kind of action-adventure exploration in general. But
yeah.
Yeah, and I really like the enemy design. They only show off a few of them in the trailer, but they're these things that are like kind of walking through the water. They look like the big the tripods from like War of the Worlds, just kind of like towering over things. I don't know, it looks super cool. And this just like came out of nowhere. It sounds like it might have been out on PC for a while or was announced for PC, but they just announced it for consoles and it comes out also in December. So I'm like, all right, well, cool. Yes, I will take this interesting game that I did not know existed.
This is the game that I would expect to see in an indie world for Nintendo probably.
Yeah.
Because it looks really interesting. To be honest, the visuals are amazing. The only issue that I think this game would probably have is that it looks like the kind of game that the Switch will not run very well, just because of the scale and how fast things happens. But of course, I still give the benefit of the doubt. It looks super interesting, and I'll definitely keep an eye on this.
Yeah, 3D games are it is hard because there are plenty of like 3D platformers, 3D action adventure games that come to Switch and run fine. But for as many that come over with no problems, there's probably just as many that come over with some type of issue, frame rate or, significant blurriness or whatever it is.
And usually
you just never know until you get your hands on it.
Yeah, and usually indie developers don't have the budget to make a multi-platform game that runs all right in all platforms, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. I will say, like, at least as far as I'm aware, Zoink Games has a pretty good track record of putting out quality products. They may not be everyone's cup of tea necessarily, but like, at least from a technical perspective, I don't think I've played a game from them that has been buggy or glitchy or anything, so hoping for the best with this one.
Right,
But,
that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Yeah, but we will find out because that one is coming on December 12th, so also right around the corner at this point. Gosh, I keep forgetting it's almost November.
Oh, God.
Well, actually, it will be November by the time folks are listening to this, so happy November.
Oh,
everyone.
God.
I know. All right, one more indie to shout out here, also from Thunderful that they showed off this week. This one was shown off during Gamescom, and that was where it first caught my attention, but we finally got a release date for it, or a release window, I should say. It's coming in December. So it's called Swordship, and the premise is you are controlling like an F-Zero style like racing hovercraft, but you are not really racing. You're actually being chased and attacked by these enemies that are just trying to like wipe out your ship, and I think it's like a one-hit kill kind of thing. So the only way you can get through the levels is by trying to dodge everything, and you have to kind of use enemies' weapons against them. So like if an enemy, it looks like, at least I haven't played the game, but it looks like where some of the strategy comes in is like, oh, someone is aiming a shot at you, so you have to kind of line up with other enemies and then quickly get out of the way so they destroy each other. And it's a really eye-catching game. It looks immensely stylish, and I haven't really seen anything like it.
It looks like kind of a shmup with a very unique sort of premise.
I would say
Like a
exactly
blood hell
that.
shooter. Yeah.
Because you do not shoot.
Yeah. It's like a reverse shoot 'em up. It's probably how they marketed it at one point. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah,
the
I
art
also-
style is also nice for like usually shoot 'em ups or 2D games. It's the perspective that they give us is really different from anything that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and also like you're like racing towards the camera. You don't see a lot
Yeah.
of that. And yeah, I feel like this is a game that is just gonna look absolutely gorgeous on the Switch OLED. Like just with all the colors and
Oh,
how everything is designed. I really want to play this one. This one is pretty high on my indie interest list. So yeah, so those are some of the indies that were announced this week. There are always, this is where it gets hard. There are always indies I feel like being announced for the Switch like every single week, and we literally could not talk about all of them if we tried. I don't think, or maybe we could if it was like a 3-hour podcast, but I don't think anyone would listen to that. So, but yeah, every now and then I like to highlight some of these experimental games, especially when they just kind of come out of nowhere and surprise me. All right, let's talk about some of the recent releases. So obviously the big one is Bayonetta 3. We are going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show because Nicolas has been playing it. So stick around for that. But there are some other smaller games that came out this week, all kind of notable for different reasons. I'm going to go a little bit out of order in the list I have here. This one came on my radar thanks to an article I saw. So Ace Angler Fishing Spirits is it's a fishing game. I would say it's a franchise that's mostly known in Japan. Like we don't get a lot of these games released over here as far as I'm aware. So this one is weird for a couple reasons. First of all, it's a fishing game, but it's mostly like fishing based mini games. So there's a lot of like different types of activities that are all like related to fishing, but they're all different types of mini games. And you can actually buy a bundle that has like a fishing rod, like physical controller that like you slot your Joy-Con into, and you can like reel it, like it has like an actual crank on it to like simulate the fishing experience.
That's very
I see
Wii.
we're back to the Wii era of
Yeah,
controller
Which-
for
I'm all about
plastics
it.
controller. Yeah,
Yes, we all need more plastic controllers wasting away in bins in our living room. I think we need to
I
return.
mean, if you have the room in your house,
things.
you know, there you go.
Yeah, so this one actually has been out in Japan for a little while, I want to say. But yeah, it is out now on Switch. But one of the reasons it was making the news this week is because the character design bears a very striking resemblance to the characters in Animal Crossing. Did you guys see this?
it's really similar. They are like
Yeah,
a little more
cut-
chibi, a little more baby, I would say. I don't know, but they are super similar.
They are baby.
Yeah, a little bit. And there's even like one of the things they advertise in this game is like there's like a museum that you can go and walk around at. Like there's like an aquarium. You can go walk around in with your little Animal Crossing style character and go look at all the fish you've caught. That also bears a very striking resemblance to the one in Animal Crossing. It's just weird. It's a weird.
It's not a bad idea if you want to kind of expand on the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep like a little
I
bit
guess
more
it's a
do
good
with the
way
fish
to-
you catch.
Yeah. I guess it's a good way to
The
get
game-
people's attention, right? Like.
The game looks actually there's a lot of stuff in the game from what I'm seeing here, like tons of mini games and different stuff like that. It looks like something that you would find in arcades in Japan. It looks very, very like a Japanese product or something.
It
like
is
that.
actually. Yeah.
Oh,
They
so yeah,
are
that
arcade
makes
games
sense.
in Japan as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a compilation of a lot of mini games
Yeah.
related to fishing.
But it's also, yeah, which I mean, I guess fishing is cool, but I'm not that into it. Like, I don't know if I would, I can't imagine playing a serious fishing game for a long amount of time, but I guess I could see myself having some fun with something silly like this.
I think that's also something cultural from Japan, right? It's like fishing is every game, even adventure games like Zelda have fishing mini games, so it's something kind of big there.
It is trendy right now. Yeah, you can't have a life sim or farming game without some fishing in it. It feels
Or
like.
RPG.
Sonic
Or RPG,
Frontiers has
yeah.
fishing. Yeah.
Oh my god, I cannot wait to see what that actually looks like. Do you just like run around in a circle and just fish pops up in the air. I don't know.
Just create a tornado at the top of the water and just fly everything in the air.
No,
Just
it's
rain
just
from the sky.
it's just a minigame with Big the Cat. It's as you'd expect from a fishing minigame.
As you'd expect. That's what Big the Cat is known for. Oh, man. Okay, yeah, so that's part of the weirder release of the week. But you love to see it. We've also got Factorio, which looks, frankly, just completely overwhelming to me. So this was shown off in a recent Nintendo Direct. It might have been an Indie World, I'm not sure. Some form of Nintendo presentation. And this game is very popular on Steam. I don't know how to describe it other than you build a factory, and the factory gets bigger and bigger, and the whole point of the game is to build a very large factory. And it just... I mean, I can see how it looks fun, but I think I would be exhausted after about 30 minutes of playing this.
I think it's the type of game where people that love it, it's basically everything they've ever wanted out of a video game. I do wonder how exactly it performs on Switch, just even in terms of controls, because it's very much... it very much seems like the type of game that you would want to play with a mouse.
Yeah.
So I don't know how exactly that would work on Switch.
Yeah.
It has that,
I mean, the touchscreen I see could be useful, but...
Oh, true. It has that Windows XP look from games of that era. But for those who love management games like Roller Coaster, and there's the recent Jurassic World game also, I think it's kind of similar to that.
Yeah. I would love to hear from someone...
factory builder.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it also looks like there's like some level of like tower defense. It almost looks like, because it says in the description on Steam, you need to protect it from creatures who, quote, don't really like you. So, yeah. But yeah, like I've seen actually some people play this game before, and the factories can just get absolutely massive, and I'm like, how on earth would you keep track of all this?
Yeah. It's Kerbal Space Program vibes.
Yes. So yeah, that game is out now for, I want to say, around $30 on Switch. So if you're into that, go have fun and tell me all about it, because I will not be playing this one. This is kind of the indie darling of the week, I would say. It's been getting a little bit of buzz over in the Xbox Game Pass world. It's called Signalis, and this is a horror game with just a really unique presentation. It's one of those games that seems to kind of like shift perspective. It's got like kind of a visual novel kind of vibe at some points. It's very cyberpunky. It's a hard one to pin down, honestly. Like, I feel like it's the kind of game that I'm gonna have to play at some point to really understand, because the trailers really do not give a lot away. I know they're leaning into like the psychological horror, and it's supposed to be like a very trippy experience. But yeah, have you guys seen the trailer of this? Like, what do you guys make of something like this?
I'm watching it right now, and I see some elements of games from the PS1 era, like the early Resident Evils and stuff like that. The visual is actually like simulating a PS1 game, right? It's very similar, but it has a top-down perspective. So honestly, it looks like it from just seeing gameplay, it looks like a very nice game. But because I'm not a big guy on horror, so I don't know if I would be able to play this one. But it looks like a game that I can actually play, because the vision's top down, so it's not that scary to play. But it looks interesting.
Out of curiosity,
Yeah.
just kind of off topic, you don't like first-person shooters and you don't like horror games. How would you feel playing like one of the first-person shooter Resident Evils or like Alien Isolation?
Oh, I would never be able to play a game like that. One of the reasons why I don't like FPS is because I feel like my vision is limited, because I don't know what's by my sides or behind me. And in a top-down game like this, I feel like I have more control of what's around me, so it's less scary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm with you, Luiz. I can, I'm not like totally closed off to horror games, but when it's a first-person horror game, that is oftentimes a little little too nerve-wracking for me.
Yeah.
I can usually do some of these third-person games. This one looks really good. I am very curious about it. I'll probably play it on Game Pass since I do have that subscription. But I'd imagine it'd be really good on Switch. Has gotten very good reviews. It is overwhelmingly positive on Steam
nice.
right now.
Interesting.
So yeah, I'm sure this will be right up some people's alley. So I wanted to highlight that. And Luiz, if you didn't like the horror games, I can tell you for a fact you will not like this next one. Yomawari, Lost in the Dark.
It's so cute,
these games.
though.
Oh, you think that? These are some of the most terrifying. So I played one of these games. These were big on the Vita. That was where the first game launched, and it was one of the first horror games I played on the Vita, and it is terrifying. I could not play more than a couple hours of it because
Wow.
you're just being stalked by just these absolutely terrifying things, and I just.
But
Do you disagree,
character's
Nicholas?
So
Did you?
cute. The character's so cute, though.
I'm seeing here, like, there's the character and the small cats. Like,
Yeah, it's so
this
cute.
be so
Come on.
haunting?
What could be bad about
It
this?
looks cute, but I swear to God, go play this game and then come back to me and tell me you were not scared.
Oh
And
god.
that it did not unnerve you at the very least. Oh man. But yeah, there's a couple games in this series now. I think this is the third one. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it's kind of turned into its own thing. These games are by Nippon Ichi Software, and we don't see a lot from them. But this franchise seems to be doing well for them because it's a trilogy now. So
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, the visual is, I think it's really creative. It's really different. I probably won't play because you said it that it is so scary. But oh my god, now I saw a monster here. Okay, probably I won't be able to play that.
You're like, I'm checked out. This isn't happening.
Oh my god, there's like
It's
a crab
definitely-
with a face.
Yeah, it's really the sound design I think in this one that.
Oh,
that
I
gets
see,
to
I
you.
see.
Like it's because yeah, like the visuals themselves are not like relentlessly terrifying, but you hear these monsters before you see them a lot of times, and you don't know where they're coming from, and they're just yeah.
It's
Not my
an
thing.
experience made for a portable console also, right? So to play with headphones and stuff like that.
Yes, I think very much so. So yeah,
I
it should be a good fit for the Switch.
I really like the camera angle that they use.
Yeah, me
It's not
too.
something you see often in a horror game, and I wonder how it takes advantage of that in that regards.
Yeah. So yeah, so those are some of the other games that came out this week. But I'm sure everyone wants to hear about Bayonetta 3. So let's switch over to what we have all been playing this week. And Nicholas, man, let's start with you. So you've been playing Bayonetta 3, and I want to hear all about your experience so far.
Yeah.
Spoiler free, of course, if you can.
I was going to be playing more Final Fantasy VII, like I had mentioned last week, and then my pre-order from Bayonetta 3 got moved up. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
you got it early?
no, I got it on Friday, but I was expecting to get it a little bit later. Regardless, I am not complaining. The game is fantastic. It's a Bayonetta title, which I think is kind of best defined as like it's stupid what happens, but it's fun stupid.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
That
the
makes sense.
kind of thing you're going in, starting the game that okay, I may not know what's going on, I may not know who these characters are or what they're trying to do, but I'm gonna have a great time doing it.
I'm going to see like a pizza truck delivery driver going along a tsunami wave and kind of ramming into a bunch of enemies, and that's okay. That's just what happens in this game.
I heard that
Oh,
this
man.
one goes even harder on the craziness compared to the first two ones.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that. I just got through a segment of the game where I summoned a literal devil Godzilla. The game turned into like a 2D Street Fighter style game.
Oh my god, I want to
I
play
fired
that so
a
much.
gigantic laser beam through a huge anthropomorphic whale. It's probably one of the coolest things I've done in a video game. So
Wow,
it's fun. It's a fun game.
that does sound really good.
Question. about the kaiju mechanics, which it's one of the big things of this game. Do you think it actually works fine, or it is kind of clunky to control? How does it feel?
It takes a little bit of getting used to for sure, because your character is basically immobile the entire time, and the demons are so big that you have to figure out exactly how to maneuver them around. But once you get the hang of it, you start using targeting. You upgrade some of the moves, so you have a few more options available. It actually feels pretty good. You start learning the situations in which you would want to use the demons as opposed to just like regularly attacking, since they're usually going to be able to stagger enemies more easily. So on some of the bigger enemies, you'll kind of use that during openings. The game also does a very good job of kind of, at a certain point, you unlock abilities that tie them into the combat a little bit more naturally. So rather than like executing a witch time dodge, if you have good timing, you can trigger like the demon summoning button instead, and that'll summon one of the giant demons that will counterattack instead.
Right.
And similarly to, I think, some of the stuff in Bayonetta 2, at the very end of combos, if you have good timing, you can trigger the demon summoning button, and it will automatically follow up on the end of your combo attack with a hit from the demon. So it starts getting kind of integrated into the normal flow of gameplay. It actually feels really fun.
Cool.
No, that's great to hear, because it feels like it's one of those things that like no one really asked for, and so people were kind of skeptical when they announced it. But
yeah, it is certainly a little bit of a gimmick, but it's well integrated. So
right.
No, that's good to hear. Yeah, and one of the things I've heard about this game from people who have played it is that there's so much depth to the combat that if you really want to sink your teeth into it, you're probably going to end up wanting to play this one a couple times, because there's just so many mechanics and that, like, if you really want to see everything the game has to offer. I mean, are you kind of tracking with that thought process, or do you feel like this is going to be a one and done for you?
It's always a little bit complicated, because I think that kind of perspective of if you really get into the game, you will want to do several playthroughs is kind of applicable to most of Platinum's games in terms of like Bayo 1, Bayo 2, Astral Chain.
Right.
And I never spent too much time after with those games, just because I was kind of fulfilled by what I had initially done. I might spend more time with Bayonetta 3, just because I think I'll have some free time after I finish the game, and also it is very fun. But yeah, pretty much whatever you would expect in terms of having a lot of mechanical depth to the combat and the combo systems and whatnot. It all applies. It's just as good as the previous Bayonetta games. It improves it in some respects. Like, it's great.
Because, just another question. I saw the analysis that Digital Foundry made of the game, and apparently the FPS is all over the place. Like, it rarely goes to 60 FPS all the time. But I also heard from people who played that they didn't notice that. Like, if I hadn't told them that the game is not running at 60 FPS, they wouldn't be able to tell. What were your take on that? Do you think he managed to get on the gameplay, or it is almost hard to realize what is going on?
So I think this is probably going to depend a lot on the specific person. If you're very sensitive to changes in frame rate, you will probably notice it, and it will impact how much you enjoy the game. Personally, I really didn't. There's definitely some points where you can tell, like, oh, this is running at 30 frames per second. Like, I think the cutscenes run at 30 as opposed to aiming for 60. And there's definitely some drops in the game, certain things where a lot is happening or whatnot. But a lot of the time, I just don't... I haven't encountered a situation where it has negatively impacted what I'm trying to do, right? Like, if there's a situation in a very intense firefight where I can't get off a dodge with proper timing because there's lag, that would be a problem, but I haven't had that issue yet. Most of the times that there have been drops, it's been, like, when I've done a combo finisher, right? And this is kind of similar, I guess, to the Muso games, where on Switch they have a lot of frame drops for some of them. But if the frame drops are happening at the end of, like, your big super move, where you don't really have control over the character anyways, and enemies are getting blasted away, it's not going to directly impact what you're doing, right? You're still going to have your full, you're going to be able to react just as fast, because it's not like anything's going to be attacking you at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that. I think it's also kind of funny. I feel like all those Switch gamers who like these really action-heavy games, you know, like we do have to deal with these frame rate drops sometimes. But I wonder if that just makes us better at these types of games because we're like, it's just another obstacle to overcome, right? it's part of the experience.
If you want to think of it that way,
It's different. Yeah. Like we can predict
cool.
what is going on. Just a final
yes.
question for Nicolas about the game. We had all the controversy with the dub with Elena Taylor and Jennifer Hale. Did you got used to the voice of Jennifer Hale? Do you think she did a good job? How was your feeling while seeing all the scenes in the game?
I'm probably not a great person to ask because I didn't even notice initially that the voice actor for Bayonetta was different when the trailer originally came out.
Wow.
But I mean,
high praise.
I guess in that regard, yeah, I think Jennifer Hale did a great job. There's really nothing wrong with her Bayonetta voice. It feels just as natural as the voice felt in all of the other games.
It's a similar take, right? The interpretation.
It feels very similar. It doesn't feel like there's really much missing in terms of the tone or delivery. And I have encountered one alternate universe Bayonetta at this point. And the voice acting is slightly different for them in terms of just the tone, which is, you know, to be expected.
Right.
And that, you know, it's nice. It's well done. I enjoy it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear.
I think,
It is worth noting that like the whole controversy with Helena Taylor is still ongoing, but we're not really going to talk about it too much more on this show because, again, unless something major happens, it's just kind of been the case where she wasn't telling the whole truth. You know, she's kind of had to backpedal on some things, and it's just not. I think at this point, everyone would rather, you know, like, okay, she made her point, you know, kind of. Let's just focus on the game at this point.
Yeah, we should move on from all this stuff.
Yeah.
It did get some
really
conversations.
is fun, though.
Yeah, some important
It did get some
conversations,
conversations stared around the voice acting in the industry, which I think is good. But yeah, overall, it just seemed like drama that didn't really need to happen. And
I do.
That's what I think
I do
about
just want to
that.
mention a couple of little small things for Bayonetta. They've kind of replaced the usual. In other games, you would buy special moves and you would buy new weapons and stuff, and they just kind of overhauled the whole currency mechanic, I guess, in this game, where you now have skill trees for all your different weapons and your demons that you upgrade, which ends up feeling a lot more natural, and it feels
I really prefer
a lot
that.
better.
I never liked the idea of buying
Love a good skill tree.
abilities. Yeah.
It really is fun just kind of looking at all the tools you can potentially unlock, and that's done through a separate kind of currency from like your main purchasing currency that you kind of obtain at the same time because you get it from defeating enemies. Right. It's just it feels very fun. Most of the weapon unlocks are done through story, at least they have been so far. So you don't have to worry too much about saving up money for them, which you may or may not like. Personally, I think it's fine as it is. And I really enjoyed the exploration in the game so far. The areas are a bit more open than they've been in previous games. You have some really fun tools for traversing the areas because the demon masquerade forms, which are like the sort of half demon forms Bayonetta can take on, give you some really neat movement options in terms of having like a super aerial dash or being able to swing between buildings and stuff. It all ends up making for a pretty dynamic world in terms of how you can explore, the secrets that are laid about. It's all just very fun. It feels like an improvement over the previous games in that regard.
Man, sounds awesome.
Yeah. No, I love hearing that. I'm really glad that the game turned out well, and looking forward to playing it at some point. I don't know when, but at some point.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Luis? What have you been playing lately?
So yeah, because basically I was off for 2 weeks, so actually a lot of stuff happens. First, my Switch OLED arrived, so I finally have a Switch OLED.
Nice.
Yeah. It was officially released in Brazil this month, so I actually got to buy day one, and I was just waiting to arrive home. And man, the screen really makes a big difference. I think I'm playing more portable than on the TV right now, because not only because it is way brighter and the colors are popping up, but because the screen is actually bigger, right? It occupies a bigger part of the actual console, so you really feel that difference. I was still playing the GTA trilogy, as I said last 2 weeks ago. I was playing the Vice City, and I just finished the game, and it was a blast to play on portable modes. I think it was the perfect game to play on portable modes, and Vice City is probably the GTA that has more colors, so it actually looks really nice on the console. Apart from that, the console is also beautiful. The whites, the white colors and all of that. I got the whites model. But
Yeah, that's the
beyond
way
that,
to go. It looks slick.
yeah, it looks really nice. But beyond that, the game that I'm actually playing right now, I just bought last week on Steam. It was on sale, the Spider-Man remastered. I don't have any Sony console, so my PC is my PlayStation basically. I'm just waiting for the game to release, and that was a game that I was waiting for a long time to play. I played just the beginning of the game, but man, it is like fantastic. The controls, I always, looking at people playing, it always looked amazing, the movements, the animations, but I always got the impression, man, that it must be really hard to control Spider-Man swinging with the buildings, but it's so easy. It's super natural. It feels like really great to control. And the combat is also amazing. It feels like an evolution from the Batman Arkham series, but I think with Spider-Man is even better because he is more agile. So you feel like you're actually punching an enemy, then going to the other and stuff like that. It feels really dynamic. So far, I'm loving the game. Playing it almost every day.
No, that's great to hear. Because yeah, I don't know if you were on this episode, but I was talking about how I was playing through Miles Morales, like the kind of sequel to that game, and yeah, like as far as what you're talking about, like with the combat, I mean the animation is, I think, really pulling a lot of work there, because it makes it look, and I guess that's how a superhero game should be, right? You want it to like look impressive and look, mind-blowing and advanced, but you don't want to scare away players from enjoying it. So I think just the animation in that game is what makes that possible. And it's not a huge stretch, I feel like, mechanically, from the pacing of like some of these faster like Bayonetta or like a Devil May Cry. Like you are really zipping around, and it's very skill-based. I mean, you can just like button mash your way through it if you want, but once you get into like using all of his tools and really leveraging like all your abilities, like launching enemies up into the air, and like there's a lot of depth to it.
I was actually dying a lot at the beginning, but it was mostly because I'm playing with the Xbox controller. So every time that the game say press X, I was pressing the X of the Switch controller. And when it press Y, I was pressing the Y of the Switch controller. So it got a little time to get used to the control.
That's funny. No, cool. I'm glad you're enjoying that, and I'm glad you got your Switch OLED. I think that was one of those things that I I traded in my original Switch to get one, and I was like, it'll probably be a good upgrade, but it really does just change the whole experience with that screen, and I think the build quality is a little bit better. Like it feels sturdier in the hands. And,
it feels more like a product a little more modern than the Switch. It has less plastic.
It does.
The screen,
Right.
Still waiting for that.
At its time, I thought the Switch was amazing. Like the launch Switch.
Same.
I was fascinated by it.
Compared to the Wii U.
Right. Yeah, it was a huge generational leap.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for that inevitable Tears of the Kingdom OLED to be announced before I dive in.
That's a nice.
Cool. Yeah. As far as myself, this has not been a huge like gaming week for me. I am still working through Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I think I'm about 40 hours in now, and
wow.
There's still more to do in the game. Like I've been trying to, just generally the way I play games is like, when I get into like a new area or a new environment, I try and like be pretty thorough in that area and like seeing what it has to do, as long as I'm enjoying myself, because I don't really like backtracking a ton in most games. So I've been trying to just like knock out what I can on each planet, and it's just the planets just get bigger and more complex as you get through the game. And like the one I'm on most recently, it's kind of like a garden themed planet, and it doesn't look that big at first, but then you realize like, oh, there's all these floating islands that connect, and you have to figure out how to connect them, and most of like the story beats are connected. So it's just there's a lot. I think I'm just gonna have to. I'm in theory I'm reviewing this game, but I haven't beat it yet. But honestly, I think at this point, I mean, I've sunk so much time into the game that I'm gonna start on the review because
Yeah.
it's a really good game, and I think it's probably gonna take me another 15, 20 hours to get to the end of it, and I gotta get this review out. So yeah, I'm sure I'll still be picking at that game for the next month or so, but we'll see.
Wow. That's awesome to hear. Everything that I heard about this game is like a completely upgrade from the last one, which was already a nice game. And the only reason why I didn't buy this one yet is because I know that Ubisoft will reduce the price eventually, so I'm just waiting a little bit to not pay the full price. And because there's a lot of other games releasing right now, so I'm not in a hurry. But it looks fantastic. Just a question that I want to ask you: are you enjoying the
Sure.
story of the game, the cutscenes? I'm sure it's not the main focus, but it is like. Do you think it is a little more epic or a little more serious than the last one?
I would not use the word serious in any
Yeah,
shape.
I don't think.
It's a very-
Serious maybe not
Yeah.
with the rabbits.
It's a very yeah. There's nothing serious about the rabbits. It's a excuse me. It's a very silly game. I will say the cutscenes are really well animated and really do create the sense that you're going on this epic adventure.
Right.
The voice acting is hilarious in my opinion. Sometimes I think Beepo, he gets a little grating. I think he talks a little bit too much for my liking. But all the Rabid characters, they all have their own unique voices, and their lines aren't usually like fully voiced, but like, you know, they'll like say like the first couple words, and the delivery is just impeccable. So it's really funny. One of my favorite characters in the game, he's like a side quest character that pops up on each planet. His name is Professor Backpack, and he's a small rabbit with a giant backpack that he just like lays on. And he's like an Indiana Jones style character, and voice acting just cracks me up every single time. Yeah, I would say the story is not the focus of this game. Like the prologue kind of sets up some like big implications, and like you're kind of actually, it's kind of a similar plot to like Super Mario Galaxy in that you're trying to get to the center of the galaxy to save someone.
Right.
But yeah, the story is not like the main focus. Each planet kind of has its own like sub story that like you are clearing as you're trying to get to the center of the galaxy. So I'd say it's more character based than like plot based.
I would imagine the vibe should similar to something like a morning cartoon, right? Something to that note.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Someone I read one review that was like, "Oh, the story's confusing." I don't really think it's confusing. I just think it's not the focus.
Why do the bunny people talk? This doesn't make sense.
Very confusing.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I'm glad I had the chance to play this one. I'm really curious what their DLC will look like, because there's a whole season pass planned, and obviously we know we're getting like a Rayman expansion, but there's some other stuff coming before that. The Rayman expansion is actually the last thing coming out, so yeah, I'll probably revisit it some more once we see what that looks like. But yeah, it's also a very big game, like I said, so as much fun as I'm having with it, I'm also kind of ready to... I think at this point I'm going to start making more of a beeline towards the end of the game, because it's a lot of tactics.
It is very exciting and yet scary to hear that the game is that long, because I'm going to have to reassess how much time I will inevitably spend with it. So
Right. And like, to be clear, like, you don't have to do all the side content, but when you're like making your way to the main objectives, you'll see all these like things around you that like just look interesting. Like, oh, like I know my next objective is like that way, but that like there's a big secret door and I wonder if I can get through there, or I wonder where that pipe will take me, or you know, what's over on that corner of the map that I can see in the distance. Can I get over there, or am I gonna have to come back later once I have some more abilities? So it's a game that like you want to explore and you want to do things, which I think is really telling. It doesn't feel like you're just like checking things off a box for the sake of it, which can happen in a lot of Ubisoft big open world games. It feels all very like everything feels high quality, and I think that's why I'm spending so much time with it.
Awesome.
But yeah, that is our show for the week. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to episode 30 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. We are so glad to have all of our lovely listeners. And thank you for supporting us. We are on every streaming platform. Well, maybe not all of them, but most of the big ones. Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it. We've also got a video version on YouTube or on Spotify, so if that's your jam, go check those out if you're not doing that already. And yeah, thank you as always. We will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.